Sorry about that. Okay. All right, we are going to get started. I want to start by saying welcome to those that are here. Mr. Odell is on the road. He was called away for a business meeting. He is on travel. Um, let's see here. Miss Phillips is away on travel as well. And there's somebody else. Oh, and it is Jub's Holmes' birthday. And she is celebrating probably her birthday month. Um, Probably like Dr. Osgood as well, because they are really do it up for their birthday month. Okay. We will go ahead. So with that, thank you all for coming that are here. And let us go with introductions. Self-introductions. Don't be shy. Anybody go first?
Valerie Wanza, Interim Superintendent, Dr. Vicky Wright's designee. Also, Madam President, Dr. Osgood is still downstairs. The board meeting workshop stuff got moved to today because
Okay.
we were off yesterday. So that's where Dr. Osgood is.
Okay. Okay.
Colonel David Holmes, Executive Director for Department of Law Enforcement, Broward County Sheriff's Office.
Gordon Weeks, Public Defender's Office, Public Defender.
Roosevelt Walters.
Anyone else who hasn't introduced themselves?
Yes, good afternoon again. This is Travis Lagarde. You see my name twice. We have a new mentor coordinator who is with us, and she's joining on the call with me today. So that's why
Okay.
you see my name twice.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Cassandra Evans, Chief Probation Officer, Circuit 17, DJJ.
Thank you.
David Watkins, Broward Schools.
Thank you. I could barely hear you, Miss Brown. Are you whispering?
I'm having problems with my voice.
Okay. Okay.
I
All right. Just
I
wave. Go like that.
apologize.
Yolanda Brown, Broward County Court Administration. Thank you.
Thank-
Let me see if I don't see a state attorney here. I do not. And I'm sure the commissioner is on the campaign trail because it's getting hot out there. Okay. All right. So we will be mindful, is that everybody? Of our norms. Cell phones on vibrate, raise hands and to be recognized to speak. Maximum 3 minutes per person. Respect all others' opinions and viewpoints and address other board members respectfully. We're going to start with, we finished up last month's meeting talking about juvenile expungement. And so we had our ask of the public defender's office, actually he volunteered, told his staff to get some information for us so we will understand the statute as it sits now when it comes to juvenile expungement. And with that, Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me just give everyone a brief overview of where we stand with expunction. There are two types of expunction that apply for juveniles, one being diversion expunction. That's governed by statute 943.0582. And under that statute, it lays out that if a juvenile has participated in a diversion program, they are eligible for expunction. It defines the diversion programs as 4 different types under the statute, one being civil citation, one being a pre and post-arrest diversion program operated by the state attorney in conjunction with law enforcement, another being a neighborhood restorative justice program. We don't have that in Broward County, but we should look into it in the future. And the fourth being a community arbitration program. We don't have it in Broward County as well, but we should also look in that in the future as well. If a juvenile participates in any one of those diversionary programs and they successfully complete that diversionary program, the state attorney can sign off on that, and then the child has an opportunity to expunge their records. However, there is a catch. The child has to pursue that expunction before their 18th birthday when they turn majority, and then that expunction will satisfy. If at some time in the future, and let me define why this exists. A diversionary program means that they did not go through the court system. However, there may still be some records that exist with the Department of Juvenile Justice, the agency that arrested them, or even may exist with the clerk. As a result, in order to protect that child, it gives that child an opportunity, through their parents, of course, to seek that expunction. However, they need assistance with the state attorney to sign off and verify that they have actually completed the diversionary program to their satisfaction. The second version of expunction that exists to all individuals, which is adults and juvenile, is if you commit an offense and the state attorney does not proceed forward. In that case, either no process dismissed or you're not adjudicated by the court. And there are certain disqualifying offenses. And without me listing all of those offenses, I'll characterize them as forcible felonies. Those are disqualifying offenses. You can seek an expunction of those records as well. Because that does not interfere with your first time diversionary expunction, it counts as a second for purposes of juveniles, because if you participate in a diversion, you can get it once, but as an adult, you can seek an expunction for another matter in the future if you have not been adjudicated by the court or the state attorney has dismissed or no process your case, and it's not a forcible felony. That's where we stand right now with expunctions in Broward County. Strike that in the state of Florida. And as a result, we're going to try to put some systems in place, particularly for children that participate in diversion. Not all children that participate in diversion will be appointed an attorney. Most of them will be, but if they are not, we'll have to create some systems to give them that information so they can pursue their diversionary expunction prior to their 18th birthday. But our office will put together a packet for those that we represent and make sure they get that information so they can pursue that option prior to them turning 18, so they can have that cleared off their record. What is the purpose of expunction? A lot of folks talk a lot about why would you want to seal someone's records? Why would you want to take that off of the record? And it's the best way for me to describe it is like this. You know, in a civil context, if you run up your credit card and you open up a bunch of businesses and you find yourself to be bankrupt, you can go through a process through the courts to have that bankruptcy dissolved and have your debtors and creditors paid. And after about 70 years, that rolls off of your credit history to allow you to regain credit and to re-enter back into society, so you can then become functional, because you need credit in order to rent a house, buy a car, things of those sort. So the process of clearing someone's previous history is not foreign. It is long been accepted in the civil arena. The same process exists for purpose of expunction. Many states all across the United States have automatic expunction. Some of them have time-based expunction based on a certain period of time without new arrests. Their cases are sealed or expunged off your record. In Florida, we have a system where the person must seek to have the expunction. It does not happen automatically, nor is it based on a matter of time. But it is under the principle that at some point you give a person the opportunity to have a reset. And that reset is based on the fact that the charge was not adjudicated, it was not a forcible felony, and it can be expunged off the record to allow that individual to reset and move forward. It is not a foreign concept. It has been on the books for many, many years, and a lot of folks have availed themselves to expunctions that have found themselves in trouble with the law at early stages in their life. It gives you an opportunity to move forward and to become productive. So it is a very important tool. I know a lot of folks that have availed themselves to it. I've assisted people in availing themselves to it, and I've watched folks move forward to become very productive after pursuing that option. So I just wanted to give that, not only the statutory requirements, but the history and the reason and the rationale for why expunction exists. Thank you, Madam President.
I see a question from Mr. Walters. Mr. Walters, can you unmute?
Thank you, Madam President, Chair. When we was helping with the concealment, and they had a $75 charge per individual seeking to the expungement or concealment. Do that still exist?
Yes, that process still exists. There is a certificate of eligibility that you must receive from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. That certificate of eligibility occurs after you've applied. And the monies that you pay, the $75 processing fee, is for them to do a full background check to make sure that you have a qualifying offense and that you're able to meet the statutory requirements for expunging. They also require that you submit a set of fingerprints. In some instances, there may be a cost associated with obtaining those fingerprints. There are certain law enforcement agencies that will waive the fee if you're a minor or if you ask very nicely. But some law enforcement agencies do have I believe it was a $20 processing fee the last time I checked, to have your fingerprints actually taken and signed off and certified that those are in fact your fingerprints to send up with a $75 application fee. So it's $75 along with the fingerprinting charge, along with the time and the effort that you're going to put into gathering all the documents together in order to submit your application.
Thank you, but a follow-up, Madam President, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair. Those that seeking this expungement in other places where you say it's automatic or whatever, I guess at the completion of a period of time or whatever, do they charge? Whether you know that or not, I don't know.
In Florida, there is a charge. There are other states that have an automatic system based on a period of time that will allow your records to automatically be sealed. Some states also have a system where you must apply and be considered for having it expunged. But Florida it's not an automatic state. We have to actively seek to have your records expunged. And there is a distinction between expunging and sealing. There is a difference.
I know.
And the difference is very technical, but for us legal folks, expungement means the removal and destruction of those records. A sealing means to physically seal them and put a barrier from the public to be able to have access to them. And that is the distinction, the best way for me to explain it to everyone that's online.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Evans, Chief Evans.
Yes, afternoon. Two things. Mr. Weeds, can you provide me the statute again that you referenced, 243?
It's 943.0582.
0582, perfect, thank you. And the second item, Madam Chair, last month you asked if the department had any quantifiable way of providing any numbers on the rate in which we've done either sealing and expunging of records. I did inquire about that, and for the very reasons that Mr. Weeks mentioned about the barriers to preventing a slip and say the information getting into the wrong hands, we don't capture any reports. As to the numbers, I do know historically our numbers have been higher because our diversion coalition and the efforts I know of Senator Thurston, I believe at the time, was putting forth. But no, there are no reports that are available. So I just want to advise you of that. And then Mr. Weeks, you mentioned that you all are going to be putting forth some efforts there. And if there's if it's a package or maybe a one pager or something that you have available, if you certainly share that with the department, we will include that in all of our paperwork when we notify the young people and their families that their cases are closed.
Thank you. We're preparing those. It's like a flyer, but the graphics folks and all that stuff. You gotta get all that stuff taken care of. But we're putting something together.
All right, perfect. Just share out, and we'll also distribute as well.
I believe, Ms. Evans, the reasons Broward's numbers were high because the previous state attorney made sure that there were multiple workshops at one time. They were doing them at least as often as quarterly. Based on what was shared last month by Gloria, and from what I know, that's not really happening now. I don't know, and I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go to any of the Diversion Coalition meetings, so we don't know if the information is being shared that it is even an option that that a child could have his or her record expunged. I think there is no movement. Is there anyone? I don't see anyone from the state attorney's office that's on. If you are on and you've been empowered to speak for the state attorney's office, if you will raise your hand. I don't see one. And so that has ceased, and that I'm hoping that at some point there'll be some interest from the state attorney's office. I'm thinking if the public defender's office does all that he can on his side, get the packet together, that perhaps there will be some interest in the state attorney's office in signing off and allowing these children to move forward without having the arrest or on their record. Also, Mr. Weeks, give us an example for us non-lawyers of a forcible felony.
A forcible felony would be an armed burglary, a aggravated battery, anything involving a weapon, or anything involving a burglary into a residence. Those are all forcible. Homicide, sexual related offenses are all forcible. So anything that's involving violence, weapons, would be considered forcible. The types of cases that are routinely that I've seen that are subject to expunction they usually are petty thefts that occur, and I don't want to call the place out, but Claire's apparently has a bunch of stuff in there that glitters, and people just can't.
And it costs $6, but they like it, yeah.
And as a result, they will get themselves arrested, and then after going through diversion, that will be subject to getting expunged. A possession type case of drugs may be subject to expunction. Things that are usually minor, a theft related offense because of the Claire's and all the glittery stuff in there. Those are the types of cases that we routinely see that are subject to expunction. Thank
you. Colonel Holmes?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. I had a question for Mr. Weeks. How much involvement do you receive from law enforcement in these matters? I know a lot of times the arresting officer may have some input on whether they are pushing a case one way or another. Are you getting a lot of involvement from law enforcement here in Broward as far as expungement cases?
No, the real need for law enforcement when it comes to expunction is to assisting in filling out the packet, getting the fingerprint card done. We've had instances where in-court deputies have been assistant. When the court will allow, the deputy will do the fingerprint card for the child or the individual. But what I find folks having the most difficulty is finding a law enforcement agency where they can bring the card and get the fingerprint done, because you guys don't usually have a staff available in the office or in your lobby that is qualified to do a fingerprint card. Your staff is usually the front desk personnel that work the front desk, and you have to schedule a time when they're going to have a certified officer to take fingerprints to do the fingerprinting. There's a few departments that I know that have a schedule for the fingerprinting, at least the last time I checked, when that was years ago. I won't say who they are, but there are a few. But if that's an area where you want to fill a void that is very much needed, if you can identify a location, a time, and a schedule for fingerprinting that we can say, go to this office Monday through Friday, they will fingerprint you at zero cost, that would be greatly appreciated, because that's where people have difficulty navigating how to get the fingerprint card done, because you have to have it from a certified law enforcement officer that does it.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. I know over the years, fingerprinting has become a hot topic because of staffing concerns. But you're right, if that's an obstacle for juveniles that want to participate in an expungement program, I think that's a way for law enforcement to step up and assist in the matter. Because I was thinking that you would have more obstacles actually with the officer, maybe making the arrest or some personnel within the municipality. And I was suggesting maybe having some community policing officers get more involved to see if they can assist. But if the biggest obstacle you're saying is the fingerprinting, that's something that we can definitely, discuss and work on, especially with BSO being the largest agency in the county, and we have tons of districts. Maybe we can discuss that offline and try to work on making it easier for family members.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. Victor Lunda, Fort Lauderdale, second largest. What y'all got over there, huh? Besides a new chief, what do you all have?
Yeah, we do have schedules for when people can come get fingerprinted. I'll talk to the chief and see if he's inclined to waive the fee for juveniles.
What's your normal fee?
I don't know offhand, but I do know there's a charge.
We ain't got no money. I was just asking because we know our kids don't have no money.
Yeah, so like I said, I'll talk to the chief, see if he's inclined to get it waived.
Well, he said he's all about the 21st century policing situation and that whole concept. So I hope that will be an easy one there, at very minimum for the children that's from Fort Lauderdale. I mean,
Yeah, I'm trying to make it hard so you can have an easy win.
Okay.
Right.
I'm for that. Gordon, you said that the expungement, you named the different types and you mentioned so is there a difference between just an administrative expungement and other types of expungement?
Yes, there is a court expungement and there's an administrative expungement. The diversionary expungement is considered an administrative expungement. That means that the court does not have to grant you the authority to have that expungement. By virtue of you completing the diversion and having it certified by the state, you are entitled to pursue that expungement if you qualify. A court-based expungement is when you petition the court. All other expungements are court-based, where you petition the court and the court will hear your petition and then grant you an order. Now, this is where it gets very complicated because navigating the process of getting it into court and getting in front of a judge and then making your argument to have the court granted. But once the court issues the order has to be very, very specific, directing every agency that you have had contact with during the course of your arrest to then expunge those records. And that's where many folks find it hard to identify all of those agencies. That's why it's oftentimes very important to have an attorney assist you with that in getting all the agencies identified. And then once you get them identified, you then have to serve that order on each one of those agencies so that they can then follow the court's instruction, which means to expunge the records. It's not an easy task. And I oftentimes suggest to people that are pursuing the process of expungement to do it as soon as they are readily available after they've completed whatever sanction it is from the court or whatever the case is resolved. Because the longer you wait, you have to think about what happens outside of you waiting. Those records are in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and there are private entities that purchase those records, and then they put them into their database. And once they go into the private entity's database, they're available to be sold online for background checks. It's almost like trying to pull a needle out of a haystack once the record is sold into the private database. So it's very important that if you're seeking to expunge your case, that you move very expeditiously, very quickly after the resolution of the case to get that order from the court so that you can get it to all of the agencies, including the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, so they can expunge it rather than selling it to the private entity. Because once it's sold, it's almost impossible to sort down all the different agents or all the different private companies that have bought those records and then make them available to anyone that does a background check. I've had people, reach out and say, hey, I'm trying to rent an apartment, but they're showing this arrest from when I was a kid, but that was expunged. And I then asked them, well, when did you get it expunged? Well, I got it expunged, 2 years ago. Well, how long ago were you arrested? I was arrested when I was a kid. It was like, 10 years ago. Well, between that 10 and that 2, 8 years have gone by, and those records were out there, and they were purchased by a whole bunch of companies. And when that potential landlord is doing a background check, they don't do it with the court records. They don't go to the clerk of court and do a background check. They just go online and pay $29 or $39, and one of those companies will shoot back that information. And if it's already been sold, it's almost impossible to expunge it. So it's very important to act very quickly with sealing, strike that and expunging records. The longer you wait, the more potential it is for them to get out into the private sector.
And is there a difference between a civil citation expungement and a diversion expunction?
Pursuant to the statute, there is no between the two. A civil citation should not have a large footprint in the criminal system. However, there is a footprint, and that is still subject to being expunged. Just as well as a diversion program that the state attorney may run or a law enforcement agency may run, those footprints also need to be expunged. And those are the administrative expungements from a diversion-based expungement.
So, Chief Evans, so once a child successfully completes the civil citation program, they complete the expunction process for civil citation. What does that look like in your system?
To my knowledge, those records are not exchanged with FDLE. So there should be, so Gordon, when you said that, I'm gonna have to, I made a note to look into that, because that's one of the things we tell the young people, that if you're ever asked, that you can certainly say no without any further administrative processes from the department. So because they sit in a non-delinquent side of the system. So you're telling me based on your research, it leaves a footprint?
The expunction that you're seeking from the court, the order will tell every agency, including the Department of Juvenile Justice, the arresting agency, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and any other agency that responded to the scene, to take those records and hold them and expunge of them. The administrative expungement through diversion tells the Department of Juvenile Justice and the Department of Law Enforcement to do the same. And you don't have to have an order directing you to do that.
Okay. I'll, Madam Chair, I'm gonna have to look into that.
But
Okay.
we have Judge Rabola online, and I'm sure he signed a number of those orders, so he knows the length and the detail and the breadth of those orders as well.
Judge?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. So is anything you could share?
No, I think Mr. Weeks has been very thorough. The expungement orders that I've received, I've never declined signing one. And I'm sure that the rest of my brethren that sit in the Juvenile Delinquency Division would be more than, I can't tell you that 100% of them will get signed, but as I've indicated, I've yet to decline signing one. Mr. Weeks, are you aware of me ever declining signing one?
I think that most of the courts are pretty supportive of the application for a expungement, because number one, the statute provides for it, and if you meet all the criteria, there really isn't a very strong opposition from the state. I've not heard of strong opposition from the state on these. I just encourage folks, you have to move quickly. The longer you wait, there's potential with the way that things are digital to get out there into the digital universe, and it's almost impossible to unring that bell.
Ms. Evans, does that include juvenile civil citations? Is there a record that gets out there beyond, like who has access to JJIS now, I guess?
That part is still limited, who has access to JJIS and what you can actually see. And so there are, I mean, from CCIS to
Law enforcement, state attorney's office?
Law enforcement has it by way of their portal to get directed to a variety of different websites, state attorneys, public defenders' offices across the state. What they can and cannot see is all regulated. But as far as the database and us sharing data, which typically happens behind the scene, that's pretty heavily regulated. And it's very specific to a particular function, ACA for Medicaid purposes. So I want, like I said, I'm gonna have to look to see, but there's some very specific firewalls to prevent this from happening, and certain pushes do not happen. But I'll check with our MIS department to see what those protocols are currently.
Yeah, I would love to know what a expunged civil citation looks like, because if it's still out there, then I don't know, you've
Defeated
that's a far cry from what we started at and how it was supposed to be. Mr. Walters.
Madam President, I'm just going to renew my argument from 5 years ago on this same subject, as if though it was just stated 10 minutes ago.
Yes. Not what we wanted for civil citation, you're correct. Still got a record. Okay, if you will let us know, Chief Evans, that'd be greatly appreciated. And so, what do we do? How do you reach once, Mr. Weeks, and you've gotten with the colonel and the major, and you've worked out the details? How then do you suggest, or what's the best way to reach those folk who haven't reached that 18-year threshold, who have been successfully expunged, either administratively or otherwise? How do you then tell, or who are eligible to be expunged but have not completed because they may not know that it exists or that is a deadline, but they've not turned 18 yet? How do you think would the best way to reach those folk?
You know, I think the best database for that information would be the state attorney's office. They would have a record of every child that has successfully completed a diversion program. And if they have completed the diversion program, then they need to act expeditiously before they turn 18 to pursue that one-time expunction for completing a diversion program if it's not a disqualifying offense. So I think that would be the best, most encompassing database. I don't think the Department of Juvenile Justice would have that data. We would have it on a limited basis because we would have those children that we represented, not those children we have not. And the courts, I don't think that would have that data as well. But I think the state attorney's office would have all of that data, or they should have it all, because they offer the diversion and they would have the disposition they successfully completed that diversion.
So we're going to rely on the state attorney's office? Is that what we're saying? Well, for civil citation, they would not have that, correct? Necessarily,
No, for
but like Ms. Gaynor is, oh, she has her hand up, so hopefully she has something to share here. Like, we just need to know, for those folk to know before it's too late, that at least there is an option when we get it in place. Ms. Gaynor?
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm raising my hand to also get clarity.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Okay. To also get clarity, because I know that we're saying JJIS, which is the Juvenile Justice Information System. But for clarity, there's supposed to be a firewall in JJIS and all of the civil citation youth, as well as the prevention youth, which are youth who are participating in any kind of DJJ funded program, should be in the prevention web. And I understand that after there were some changes, but I still think there needs to be clarity as to who have access to the prevention web, which is separate from the delinquency side. Because as far as civil citation, my staff, once we get it from law enforcement, we enter that information into prevention web. But once we enter that information into prevention web, besides prevention web, that information can't get anywhere else. Unless, of course, now law enforcement or other entities have access to it.
Again, let me ask the question again of Chief Evans. Who has access to JJS? Who has access to the prevention web? I know we talked about some before, so let's be clear.
Right now, the large categories will be, of course, the department staff, all of our contractor providers who work with delinquent youth, all the programs that we pay for, so that be made, whether it be prevention services or delinquency, all of those providers have access to it. When the statute changed, prior to the statute changing, upon request, the members of the state attorney's office could access it. Members of the public defender's office could access it. Typically in jurisdictions, you'll see court administration or some part of the case management process have access to the system. In smaller jurisdictions, you may even have a judicial assistant who can have it. So anybody who's like a stakeholder in the criminal justice world on the delinquency side have traditionally been able to get it. Law enforcement, almost nearly since the inception of the Juvenile Justice Information System, have been able to access JJIS via CJNet, right, which is their portal. When it relates to about 5 years ago when the statute changed and it allowed prevention web always existed, not always, but it existed for a long time, and it expanded to allowing law enforcement to have access as well. So they can see that initial search screen and bring up those face sheets along the way. So those are the larger categories of folks. I mean, I can't name, specific programs may have access to it if they've asked and applied for it specifically, but those are the categorically, that's who has access to the database.
So let me just be clear on this. When you said programs that you pay for, so if DJJ provides funding to the Qs for their Lamplighters program, do the Qs then have access to, because I guess they are a paid program, do they have access to the prevention web?
If they're required to input data, they would.
Okay, so if I wanted to, technically, if I wanted to find out if a kid had some stuff, I could just ask whoever the boss list has assigned over there, did little Gordon get into some stuff? And then, I could find out that way.
It violates the rules, but yes, the same way anybody who has access to DCF system, and they work for DCF, you could ask that person, hey, has there been any abuse calls, by looking in their family safe, their safety net program. So you're correct that any program can be infiltrated when those who are allowed access grant access in a way that's unscrupulous. So that is possible, that you could have that. We can see where you're moving in JGIS pretty well and what you're accessing. And then we also have permissions where you can't get to certain aspects of it. So you can only see, perhaps a face sheet. So there are some permissions and some safeguards within the system to prevent you, say, from getting to the kid's social security number. That's an example of a permission-based access we have.
That's a lot of people.
It is.
That's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Tamika, did you have another question? I see your hand is still up. Thank you. Mr. Walters, your hand is still up. Did you have something else?
Madam Chair, back in the day, I thought we had put this matter to bed and it was sleep. Come to find out, they were just having a nightmare. And I think the more we talk, the worse position I find us to be in. And again, when I was arguing these points before, I was being told by the by the state attorney's office that these things wasn't possible, that nobody could retrieve this information. But as I listen to the chief now, hell, everybody can. And that's a problem. That's a problem for us as a body who is trying to do good, right, and just things by our youth, to find out that what we got is a whole bunch of loopholes. And I'm not blaming anybody, by the way.
No, we get it. Okay, well, so Gordon, you will let us know as you move along with the process. And hopefully, once you are done, you and the colonel and others, then we will ask the state attorney for their cooperation and to live up to his campaign promises. Okay, so Mr. Weeks, have you received any updated memos or updated information on the MOU from the state attorney's office regarding the 12-year-old and under arrest?
No, I have not. I do have the information ready. I was waiting for the chair to let me know when we're going to present to the body and adopt it so we can forward it over to the county to hold. But as of that time, I've not received any new updates from the state. I know they were working on some stuff, but I have not yet seen the final updates.
Okay. Does anyone know if any agencies have signed on? I guess Fort Lauderdale, did you all receive a copy, an updated copy, and have you all signed on?
Yeah, I spoke to Brad just before the call, and he just received an updated version from Chief Evans, and he has yet to be able to review it. Once he reviews it, he'll forward it accordingly.
Okay. Chief, it sounds like you were in the previous meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So the update is completed?
The update, I received approval from our general counsel, which was the last one to be done. So I just shared that out today, and I did hear back from Mr. Weissman. He has agreed to, it was one very small Scribner error that we corrected. So the final draft was just completed literally a couple of hours ago and then shared out. And so in my conversation with that committee, I did advise once we got to that juncture that upon request, you all had upon the request that's previously made by this body, that I will be sharing that out, and there was no concern with that. So that will come out to you, Madam Chair, this afternoon.
Okay. Is there any part of that that you can share with the CAB since we're here?
Sure. Tell me anything in particular, or just
Well,
want to give you a general.
just give me a general update because he said there were some changes. So what does the agreement say basically?
So basically it says that, again, we three categories. You have the 12-year, any child 12 and younger. And then categorically the type of charges that they commit. Gordon kind of spoke about the forcible felonies would be those that most likely will rise to the level of being a youth who's detained. But the process of still contacting the state attorney's office prior to taking the child into custody and considering arrest still is in there. If the state attorney is unavailable, the department will continue making efforts to reach the state attorney prior to accepting the young person at the JAC. We work through what happens. The goal was we work through how to prevent the child from taking the car ride. Again, really trying to allow the young person to be released in the community and given like a notice to appear if that's so appropriate. If they arrive at the JAC, the department will pick the ball up and continue to reach out to the state attorney's office. We've had no issues with someone responding to us at the time of the call. And most of those young people are not processing and given alternatives. That pretty much moves the 12-year-olds. There are a very small group of young 12-year-olds who are frequent flyers at this point. And even with that, they're called, the state attorney's office is called every time. For those youth who are 10 and younger, it's a caveat in there for the continued conversation with the state attorney, especially if the young person meets secure detention criteria to prevent the placement of a young child aged 10 and younger in the detention center. And so, of course, using community-based supervision there. And then we did include the, I make it Kaya Roll, active 7-year-olds. We did include that part of the document as well, recognizing that outside of those charges that fall within the exceptions, that a young person under the age of 7 should not be charged, arrested. I don't say charged, should not be arrested. So those are probably the three major, and I'm looking over this, it's sitting on the side of my desk. Those are probably the three major functional areas that were included. It looks very similar to the first one, just a lot more of the logistics are laid out within the document.
Okay. So Colonel, you have not seen it either, so you'll be reading this afternoon, or do you have it?
Yeah, believe it or not, I just got it 5 minutes ago. And I got it from our general counsel, circulated and said this was the final version approved by all the parties. And that you're expecting the state's attorney's office to be executing it shortly, and that it will be signed off by the sheriff. So we'll be able to move forward with this.
Okay, thank you. So then we hope that the other agencies will follow suit. I know that there were some that had taken issue with it. It's always Creek, so we'll see. And it's always Creek, Springs, and too often Sunrise. So we'll see how that works out.
What I'll say on that committee included, Mr. Weissman included Mr. Lynch from BSO, and also included a representative from Coral Springs. So we kind of heard the issues and their concerns up front. And then I know Mr. Weissman and those represent the Broward Chiefs Association. And so hopefully those barriers will, I don't want to say be eradicated, but will be minimized, and we can seek a quick approval. Upon the execution of my office and that of the state attorney's office, the connection between the two of us will start instantaneously.
Yeah, it all depends on who's his chief and who's leading the Chiefs Association. Those guys have never agreed on anything. And then Weissman and even with that, they still have individual stuff going on. They have stuff going on that they're going to be mad, or they are mad that BSO got it first. They'll be mad if, when they find out that even though Brad gave it to them, it's just they got stuff that is beyond what we got going on. So, you know, I'll just call it professional jealousy for lack of a better word, but it's real in there. Okay. The missed opportunities. Tamika, let's go ahead and talk about that part of it. Let's she go back to the other side. Okay. Do you have the Tamika, we talk about the missed opportunities report, Ms. Gaynor? Chief Evans, do you have it in front of you?
I do.
Okay. Well, she
All
left
right.
up.
So for the month of October, okay, I'm sorry, for the month of, where am I? August, from August 1st to August 31st, we had a total of 7 youth who fell in the category of first-time misdemeanor cases that resulted in delinquency processing. And these are the group of cases that we're looking a little bit further into. The 4 municipalities who were on the list, and this is in order. So Coral Springs had 4 cases. Creek, Hollywood, and Pembroke Pines all had 1 case each. And of the 4 cases that were with Coral Springs, it was for an assault and battery. We followed up with those pretty quickly after they took place. And so that was not domestic violence. And I'll let Tamika speak on the rationale they gave back to that. And the other remaining 3 were, 2 were domestic violence and 1 was not. And that was with the city of Hollywood. And so some Creek gave a reason not identified as civil citation eligible. Pembroke Pines said not identified as civil citation eligible. Hollywood did not give a specific reason. And then Tamika and her team spoke directly with Coral Springs, asked her their reason for not giving civil citation for those 4 youth, but I'll let Tamika speak to their correspondence.
Okay. Ms. Gaynor?
Yes. So when we left previously, I think it was announced that the state attorney's office, along with myself, will be meeting with each one of the law enforcement agencies in order to give them an update on civil citation and lay out basically the state attorney's expectations with civil citation moving forward. Mm-hmm. Coral Springs was one of those agencies that we spoke with, and Coral Springs specifically had an agency-specific policy that pretty much prevented them from issuing civil citation for battery. We met with Deputy Chief Backer there, and what they advise us is that they will go back and they'll look at that policy after Gloria kind of explained from the state attorney office, kind of explained what the state attorney would be doing when there's a missed opportunity. They did advise us they would go back and look at their policy. They understand what everyone is trying to do, and that they're willing to amend that, of course, with the understanding that there will be individual circumstances which may cause an officer to issue anyway, but they are going to go and amend their policy according to the information that was given to us.
Did they say they were going to review or that they were going to amend?
No, he said that what he said was that he was going to go back. They were going to look at their policy. They understood it, and that's something that they would consider doing. So it wasn't affirmative, but he didn't just say they were going to look at it. He said they would consider amending that. And they had, based on my understanding, that was their intention to amend their policy.
But they didn't actually say that.
No, he didn't say we're going to go amend our policy. No, he did not.
Mm-hmm. All right. Colonel Holmes, Major London, help me.
Yeah, I guess this has been an ongoing problem with several agencies. And you're right, Madam Chair. There's a group that's been very, very stubborn. And, you know, we have other agencies that are moving forward and trying to improve the system and are listening. I think it's going to take residents to get involved and put their foot down with some of these police chiefs. because these police chiefs are supposed to be representing the community that they serve. These are young kids from the community that are getting arrested. So, the community's gonna have to come together and put their foot down, We're gonna continue to do our part here at BSO. And hopefully we're the leaders taking the forefront in this and showing that it can be done properly and it can make a difference, especially in the lives of these juveniles. So we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. And hopefully maybe some of these agencies will look at the sheriff and the sheriff's office and see the right way to do it. So we can just pray, keep moving forward, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Victor? What say you?
As stated before, the new chief is in place. He's got a commitment with working very closely with the community. This was a high priority, as you know, from our meetings that we've had, and I'm pushing that agenda forward. So we're going to see pretty good things from this chief, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may add something.
Sure.
I can tell you, Sheriff Tony has been speaking with the chief of Fort Lauderdale, the new chief, and they have taken an oath to work together in so many different aspects. And this is one of the areas that we're going to work hard together. And together, maybe we can be an example for the rest of the county. The sheriff has vowed to definitely do that.
Yeah, I had a couple of good conversations with the new chief as well. I told him I would let him catch his breath for a couple of weeks. We'll probably look at meeting next week because as soon as the plane landed, basically they had the issue, several issues within the city, and then of course with the officer dying of COVID and all the stuff that was going on there, and so. Even before he got sworn in. So I told him we would let him catch his breath. But he's really been expressed an effort to certainly wanting to meet with the community and willing to listen. So those are all good signs. Mr. Weeks, are those the kids? Are any of these people your clients? Where them kids at?
And that's the frustration, Madam Chair. We went through all this effort to comport with the statute and create the civil citation plan. The civil citation plan is a plan for the entire circuit of the 17th, which is Broward County. That means all law enforcement agencies in the county. That plan was then adopted by the chief judge and for the circuit, for the courts. So it is very frustrating to hear that we're still having agencies that are A, not operating their own civil citation program, and B, not following the plan that has been created for the circuit. So either get on board or not. But the bottom line is what's so very telling, and I need to say this from a criminal defense standpoint, law enforcement officers cannot pick and choose when they want to follow the law. It's convenient that when the law doesn't follow whatever agenda that particular city may have, that they can say, okay, we have an internal policy that says X, Y, Z. The law and civil citation is that if there is a plan in place, you follow the plan or have your own. And if they don't have their own, they need to follow the plan that we have in place and issue the civil citation, not just disregard it. So, I'm sure there are some civil rights organizations that are looking at this issue. And we're looking at those folks that are not following the law with respect to this plan. And unfortunately, an enforcement mechanism will be litigation, because I don't know how many times you can ask someone, and it's even more frustrating when you ask the person that has the gun on their hip and the badge on their chest, and they're the law enforcement officer to follow the law, and they say, we're not going to follow it. At that point, there's no more, you can't ask them anymore. You have to then either ask a court to compel them to follow the law, or ask the community to tell them that that's not the type of law enforcement agency they want in their community. It's very frustrating because we went through all this effort to comport with the law, and it was designed to have the least number of missed opportunities in the community, because we believe that it's so important to give children an opportunity when they are entitled to get a civil citation.
Ms. Evans, are those the missed opportunities? Let's start with Spring. So those are boys, girls, black, white, Hispanic. What do you have?
Looking here, and I didn't go into the database, but looking at the names, they all seem to be, not maybe to pull it up, I take that back. Scratch that. Ethnicity, race, ethnicity, they 6 are black, 1 is white, and all are males except 1. It looks like maybe 2. And then the ages seem to be 13, 14, and 50, but they are primarily looks like black males.
Okay. I'm sure nobody on here is surprised, but okay. At least they're consistent. Okay, now are these the type cases that we were trying to catch if they were eligible for civil citation at Brenda's office, at the clerk's office? And did that happen?
I mean, you're trying to look for all first-time misdemeanor, but they came in as an arrest. I'm not sure. These are not I don't believe they were out of custody. I'll have to look to see if they went to the Juvenile Assessment Center. Because if they went to the JAC, then the clerk's office wouldn't have caught these.
So then the JAC would have, you're not there yet where you're checking when is it changed for your staff?
Well, it would take the BSO would have to have it would be internal because it's primarily the BSO who will use that cross-trained deputy. Honestly, mechanically, once a child has arrived at the JAC and their custody is transferred to the department, then going back is almost mechanically impossible.
We're not there.
Okay. So,
okay.
But I will look to see if they went to the JAC, because I did not, Madam Chair.
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
We're working on that part of it. I think the bid comes in, but the actual physical shift change is not until is it 1st of next year, Colonel? You're muted, sir. Okay.
Sorry about that. Yes, the bid's in the jail. So we can go ahead and make that transition over at the JAC. Will be the beginning of the year. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think that you are, I know that you're working on that on the BSO end. So we'll have to work on, see what we can do for these other rogue agencies, if anything. Okay. Ms. Gaynor, is your hand still up from before, or did you have something else to share?
Well, I actually, if I'm allowed, I actually wanted to report on the agencies that we were able to meet with since this meeting last occurred. And I just wanted to identify those other agencies that had internal exclusions in place that would prevent a youth from being issued a civil citation.
Okay, please.
Okay, so we were able to meet with Pembroke Pines, Coral Springs, Plantation, Lighthouse Point, Miramar, Margate, Wilton Manors, Lauderhill, and then we also met with alcohol and tobacco earlier today. Okay. So of those, I'm still waiting to hear from Lauderhill if they have any internal limitations as far as issuing civil citations for charges that would be eligible according to the circuit's plan. But Plantation as well as Lighthouse Point have identified loitering and prowling as internal policy issues. Basically, they have a policy that would probably prevent them from issuing for a civil citation for loitering and prowling. And of course, as I stated earlier, Coral Springs had battery as an exclusion.
Okay. Mr. Weeks. Loitering and prowling. What's the kid doing?
Let's put it this way. Loitering prowling is one of those offenses that whenever you see it, it raises a red flag as to whether the officer is engaging in some profiling. You know, for the law enforcement professionals that are online, you know what I mean by that, because loitering and prowling is such a vague offense. And the statutory requirements to make a loitering prowling is very difficult for law enforcement officers to make. So whenever we see loitering prowling, we immediately look to the circumstances around that to suggest whether there may have been some profiling. So to hear that a loitering profiling came through and was not issued a civil citation seems to suggest to me again that there may be some you're going to take this ride even if you don't take the time type of mentality in existence. And that is exactly what this whole program was designed to minimize and prevent.
Mr. London, Major London, tell me.
So I will just say this, the reason that I know some officers have issues with this is most times they apply it to attempted burglaries. That's the main scenario that we see, where you have somebody that's in a parking area trying doors to cars or some other attempt to do a vehicle burglary of that type, and they're not successful. But outside of that, I usually don't see it applied anywhere else. So it becomes the issue of, if you catch a potential burglar, do you want to then release them? If that makes sense.
Okay. Colonel?
Yes, to add to what Major London stated, it's one of those type of issues where I think that statute is a tool that law enforcement tends to use, but it's how it's used. If you're dealing with an area that's received numerous burglaries, and you come across a person that has a history of burglary and they're in there and you prevent that from happening, yes, I mean, you're going to utilize that statute to at least take them for the ride to get them away from that environment. But, you know, it's not that way all the time. And it's really, a lot of times it's discretionary on the officer. And as Mr. Weeks stated, I mean, the laws are laws, and it's imperative that our law enforcement officers follow the law. And that's where we have to improve. We have to get better. And in all fairness too, we all know that there's certain areas that have a high number of you know, minor crimes that can lead to major crimes. And a lot of times officers use that as a tool to prevent things from escalating to the next level. I think it's important for us to, you know, communicate with the city officials, because sometimes it's the city officials too that may say, hey, we're having a problem in a particular area with burglaries. Please put your troops out there. We have zero tolerance. You know, and our officers are in a bind, they're in a predicament where they can't freely use discretion the way that they would. And then there's some officers that just have attitudes. They're mad at the world and they take it out on kids that don't deserve it. So I think we have to look at it, stand back and look at it from a distance and see which approach you need to take. And if it's a situation that needs to involve the city officials, the chiefs of police, you know, for us would be the sheriff, or higher command and then take it from there. But in short, as Major London said, it's utilized a lot of times as a tool to prevent things from escalating further, from a attempted burglary to home invasion burglary. And that's how law enforcement, that's the mindset of a law enforcement officer.
Well, I hope that if it's being applied equally, and particularly on both sides of Federal Highway, Major, that reminds me of riding bikes were black, where it was illegal on my side of the tracks, but on the other side, they were good to go. So I hope that not only Fort Lauderdale, but all the law enforcement agencies will seek to use it even-handedly. Maybe that's something we need to look at in Lauderdale. That's real interesting. Okay, Ms. Gaynor, was that all of your information? That was good to know.
Yes, that's all the information for now, but we do have some other law enforcement agencies that the meetings are pending.
Okay, but has who's that leave? That leaves because no.
That leaves the city of Sunrise PD, that leaves Davie PD, that leaves Coconut Creek, Hallandale, Hillsborough, Hollywood, and I don't believe that there's a meeting that's imminent with BSO because I don't think that a meeting was intended to be scheduled with them.
No, that's already taken care of, I believe, from jump. Okay, Mr. Walters, did you have another question, or is your hand up from before?
No, Madam President, on all the comments that's been made on this issue of prowling but you know, my thing have never been the law itself as written. It's always been the enforcement of the law. It is one of the most subjective laws on the books. And when we look at it, we can have the Chief Eben, if she will go through and look and try to determine who is being issued these citations and tickets and whatever, we will find out that we go back to the public defender back in the days when he was the chair of disproportionate minority contact. We still have that same issue today. And let me be clear. It is not always the white officer against black young men. Black officers is also handing out unequal justice when it comes to our black males.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Okay. Dr. Wanza, mandatory masking in our schools. We are getting every day. We all let another district make national news one day. We just let another district have some of that.
Listen, I try every day to stay off the news.
Well, Broward is not doing a very good job. I just want to say that. Yes, okay. So what are the numbers looking like?
In terms of what?
Numbers? In terms of folk that are new cases or folk that are, now I'm told that Dr. Osgood said it was just a handful of maybe the same 5 or 6 students that were refusing to mask.
Yeah. So as far as students refusing to mask, it's less than 10 district-wide, and they are the repeat. For the most part, the kids are wearing masks. Every now and then you get the one that it slips. Oh, I'm sorry, they pull it. But the outright refusals kind of thing, for a district with over 200,000 students to have less than 15, 20 students, really it's,
nothing.
Not a significant outcry of we don't want to wear masks.
Okay. And they're probably children of anti-maskers anyway, so, Okay. Any more arrests other than the father who shoved that child?
No. No, that was the only one.
Are there still protests going on at the schools, or is that done for now?
So we haven't seen any protesters, but there's something scheduled for that they have out on social media around doing let me get the right so I don't say it wrong, but something around, I want to say protest, walkout, whatever you want to call it, on September 10th in opposition of vaccinations and mandatory masks. Beginning next week, we will start voluntary vaccinations at schools like we did in the spring and in the summer. Only this time now we get to do all of the middle schools because it's age 12 and up. All of the high schools, the majority of our non-traditional schools. We'll have a 6-week rotation. So the 3 weeks and then come back. Well, the first dose, 3 weeks, come back for the second dose. So we start that Monday. And then we also have voluntary testing that starts next week as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's for the staff and students, or what if you have a parent or someone from the community? Or
so the vaccinations are open to staff, students, and if students have family members, staff have family members. The testing right now is unique to students only because that's the grant that we received. But we are exploring options to see if we can test staff on campus. And really that's more, for I was a close contact or I may be exhibiting some symptoms. If I can get a test right there at school, then that can, eliminate either me having to quarantine because the test comes back negative, or it confirms it, and then I can minimize exposure to others.
Okay. And I know that Dr. Osgood received a call from DSO warning her that she should be very careful and consider a detail while going to some of the games or maybe some other functions.
Right. And they've been doing that for her and the superintendent.
Yeah, and for the rest of the group, there was, I believe it was Orange County, where they were wanting folk before they went into the school event and found that 2 men were carrying, though they had permits. You can't be in that environment with the children with weapons, but and they've been associated with the Proud Boys. There was a town hall meeting, a statewide town hall meeting that was held by the NAACP Florida State Conference on last week. I saw an article that was written by someone from the Tea Party that really it seemed to me he was teeing up this whole Proud Boy thing that and bring attention, a lot of pictures of Dr. Osgood and make mention of the meeting. They even included some of her video and tried to make it up something that it wasn't, when in actuality what she was encouraging for all of us anyone to get the shots, to be vaccinated, and just sharing that it was not it's not one shot for Black folk and one for white and everybody else. It's just one shot that we all need to get, or a series of vaccinations that we need to get to be healthy. But they wanted to flip the script. So what that may very well do is, key up more messiness or potentially dangerous situation for Dr. Osgood and others. So we need to be aware of that as well.
Okay, and as a clarification on the thing on September 10th, they're asking parents to either keep their kids home or come to school and sign them out at 10 a.m. as a quote unquote peaceful protest against vaccinations and mandatory mask wearing. And I did see, I forget the school district, but I saw it on the news this weekend where a couple gentlemen went to the school and they were going to make a citizen's arrest of the principal so we've been vigilant.
Okay, that's good. That's good. It takes all kinds, huh? And were you able to find anything out, Chief Evans, on those children that were charged with domestic violence? Any update on how their cases are being handled? Okay. If you will add that to your list for next month, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Will do.
Okay. And with that, COVID, do you have any information? I know y'all start tracking, doing your online, but is there anything you could share with us regarding COVID-19 and our detention center?
Madam Chair, I spoke with the superintendent, and he confirmed that the facility was off quarantine at this time. And I did also follow up on the discussion point last month regarding the department's inclination to do testing on site. And at this juncture, there had been no discussion of that, but he did add that to his list of discussion points with his respective leadership. And that's what I could.
Ultimately, Chief, make that decision. So if I had a kid that's in custody now and I see everything that's going on, and my kid is 12 or older, he's going to be there for a couple of ticks there. How do I, if I wanted to say, who makes the ultimate decision whether he could get vaccinated while in your custody?
Well, he's in our facility, so while the parent may request it, we're not going to allow another medical practitioner to come into the facility. And since we're not administering them, then it's 99.9% sure it will not happen. There are some rare instances when young people have scheduled doctor's appointments and we transport them to those particular doctor's appointments. And so it may happen if they were off-site for a scheduled or an approved appointment. But ultimately, the department would make that decision. And I'm thinking that no less than the deputy secretary level along the way. So we're not at this point but I did express what the concerns were. And I know BSO Colonel Holmes mentioned that they were able to facilitate this process. So we'll see where this will lead us. And Madam Chair, I'll just give you our current numbers in the facility are 40, with 37 of them being male and 3 female young people. And we've been running about 38 as an average daily population.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Colonel Holmes?
Yes, Madam Chair. You want me to go over the COVID numbers first?
Start with COVID, if you would be so kind.
Yeah, COVID, as of earlier this week, the numbers have increased dramatically over the last month or so. We're up to 93 system-wide. It's very scary because just several months ago, we were down to like single digits. I think this variant, this Delta variant, has really caused a number. And then they said there's another one out there also. But what we've done is we've taken a proactive approach, informing all of our deputies that are out in the field that if it's an opportunity where you can issue a civil citation, try to increase the issuance of those to lower the number of transports down to the jail. We're trying to get a hold of this variant, and we can't if we continue to bring more and more people from the outside, because there's a lot of people out there that we come in contact with that has the COVID-19 and are bringing it into the facilities. We can do all we can to make sure the facilities are sanitized properly. But if someone comes in with it, it makes it very difficult because it can spread very easily. So those numbers are too high. We're going to continue to work on getting those down. Hopefully next month I have a better report. But when I saw that number 93, I was very disturbed by it. Very disturbed by it. As far as numbers and as far as juveniles and at the Paul Ryan facility, we currently have 10 juveniles. Because of COVID, school teachers are not allowed in the facility, so we're sticking with the Zoom teaching. And of those 10, all 10 are males. One of them is 15 years old, one is 16-year-old, and 8 of them are 17 years old. Of the 10, 4 are white, 5 are black, and 1 is Hispanic. And that's the total 10. One of the things going back to the civil citation program, what we're trying to institute now with the policy that we have in the MOU that we've signed with the state attorney's office. The state attorney's office basically says that the officer shall consider the issuance of civil citation before custodial arrest. At BSO, we're in our policy, it states deputies are required to offer juvenile civil citation. So we're monitoring that closely to make sure that our deputies are following our SOP and our policy, and we're not deviating from that. So hopefully we can stay on top of that, and more importantly, aside from the civil citation numbers, getting those COVID numbers down. It's scary. It's just a scary thought, but we're trying our hardest to reduce those numbers.
Are you still giving out masks down there, Colonel?
Yes. And offering vaccinations as well.
Okay.
We're hoping that more and more people are willing to take the vaccinations.
Are you doing testing as well?
Yes, we do testing, yes.
So that's voluntary or only if they exhibit symptoms?
Yes.
Which one, or both?
Both, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Major London, what does your policy say to the officers regarding civil citation? I know there was a time when it said that they had to, but what does it say now?
Yeah, I just updated the policy probably a month ago, and it's mandatory. The only exception is if the officer has a reason that they think it would be in the best interest of the community, then they would be required to get approval at the duty lieutenant level to deviate from the citation being issued.
You guys still don't use your jail? You taking them out to the jack, or you're doing any processing at your jail?
As of now, our jail staff is on like very restricted hours because our reservists are the ones who staff it.
Mm-hmm.
So by and large, if a juvenile is gonna go, they're gonna go directly to the jack.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any other questions, any concerns about anything we've spoken about thus far?
Well, I just have something for the good of the order, Madam President, if that's okay, if this is the right time.
Yes.
Okay. So, I'll just say, obviously, for the most part, the kids have been home for almost 18 months, right? On social media, this, that, the other, you name it. And now that they've all come back to school, and whatever they've been harboring and whatever it's starting to come alive, right, in the schools. And you all have probably seen, we've had some massive fights at a couple of the schools, Flanagan, Stranahan, Miramar. And so we are working with all of our, but I just want to let everybody know that we certainly know that it's out there and we have to address it, but the kids are really starting to, I'm going to say, just let go of everything that they have held in, and, and that for whatever reason has not been attended to in the 18 months that we shut down a lot of their physical resources, because that's where, kids come to the schools and different community places for resources, and all of those things were closed and pushed to virtual. And so I just want to put that out there that we are and we appreciate all of our community partners who are helping us to address that, because it is something. On top of me trying to stay off the news for a mask.
That's true.
But,
former BSO employee Patrick Jobbert, I talked to his wife on yesterday, and he is very sick, and she has asked for prayers from all of us. He has been put on a ventilator, and they are, nothing you could do at this stage with all the complications but to pray. But just wanted to share that as well. Yes, Colonel.
Yes, just to add to what Dr. Wanza stated earlier, one of the things that I made sure I did was prior to school starting, I met with all of our SROs, and I spoke to them about being careful of being baited into doing something to these parents, because you have these parents that are against the mask mandates that are out here trying to bait these officers and you know, and capture them on cell phone camera into doing something, crossing that line. So that's something that our troops are aware of, and they're paying close attention to that. And just to add to what you said, we've been receiving a lot of calls about fights, and we've gotten a lot of bomb threats too, believe it or not, at the beginning of school. It's sad to see, but I think it's one of those type of situations where so much frustration is building up. And it's sad to say that a lot of these kids are following behind their parents, that are some of these parents that are causing a lot of the problems. But we at the Sheriff's Office, we're teaming up with the school board. We support you and we're here for you. So don't hesitate to reach out to us should you have any issues, any concerns. We're on the same page.
Thank you, sir.
We were not mad. I think it was Paul Johnson out of Fort Lauderdale that handled that situation out at Fort Lauderdale High. We weren't mad at all with that. We thought he did an excellent job there, just for the record. Commissioner Dale Holness.
Yes, Madam President. Let me just thank you and all the members for the stellar work that's being done to help our youths. Certainly, if we're going to build a strong future, we must make sure that we do everything we can to help them now. The civil citation program, I think, works, and we have to make sure that we get to our elected officials a little bit more. I was listening most of what I could while multitasking, taking care of a whole bunch of other things. But I want to also say that our criminal justice police review board that will look at all the policies in our criminal justice system and policing, we're almost to the point where we'll have, I think we're probably only about 3 or 4 seats shy of having a full board ready to start looking at the policies and start looking at how we implement changes to make things better. And I think that would be a board that could be a strong advocate within our cities, with our police departments that are not on board to help move them forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Chief Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to add for consideration for the agenda next month, the detention risk score assessment, the DRE report, the DRE data is in. And if possible, could just have a few minutes next month to present as to what we're seeing in this quarter of young people admitted at the JAC and what those outcomes have been. And we just want to present a very thorough data package next month.
Thank you. Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo Dr. Wanza and Colonel Holmes. You know, what we're seeing with COVID-19 is real, and there's real impact, not only for those folks that are suffering or that may have been exposed, but there's also this emotional component to it and a psychological component. There is a great need for people to be mindful of the prevalence of depression, suicidal ideations. Folks are really struggling with the confinement associated with COVID and the fear that is being wrapped around it for all this political purposes, and it's causing a lot of stress. I can tell you from the courthouse standpoint, there have been a number of impacts to us as a courthouse. We're fighting through it because we want to make sure that folks still have access to the courts, but it is not an easy task. So I commend you, Dr. Wanza, in the task of opening those schools and maintaining some level of order and safety within them. My children go to school and I ask them every day, is everyone wearing the mask? And surprisingly from the kids, it's like a no-brainer. All the children embrace the mask because they understand that the mask will minimize exposure. So it's not like you got to sell it to the kids. It's a sad day that we got to sell it to the adults about the mask in schools. I can tell you, we have a mask mandate in the courthouse. It was put in place by our chief judge. We have a mask mandate within our office. It has been in place since we reopened, and it will continue until we feel that folks are going to be safe. So I commend you, Dr. Wanza. I commend you, Colonel Holmes, because I know you guys are having a very difficult time with the jail because the variant is, as you see an increase in the community, you will see an increase within the jail. You will see an increase within locked, confined units. And that's why we have seen a number of instances where our detention center has been put on quarantine, because as it raises in the community, it's going to raise inside those locked places. So I just want to stress to everyone that's on this call and that's listening that we have to be more mindful of the emotional and psychological stressors that are also associated with COVID. People are dealing with a lot right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam President, can I just say one thing? I know we got to
Yes,
go.
good.
Mr. Weeks, so the part that the news doesn't show is the best part, if you ask me. When I'm out there, there were about 200 kids behind me yelling, "Wear your mask, just wear." They will never show that part, but you're right. The kids get it. It is a no-brainer. In fact, it's a fashion statement to them now. So, but we'll keep up the good fight of faith. Thank you, Colonel Holmes.
And we are with you, just so you know. And I saw judges, I saw one of the judges, I believe in Volusia County, died of COVID recently as well. And I always think about you all down at the courthouse for sure. I'm hoping that you guys are safe, and that we get the rest of the courts retrofitted. I spoke to Judge Robinson, and he was like, I insisted to have one because I knew it was I had anticipated it was gonna be bad. And I'm always happy when I see the officers wearing masks. Unfortunately, I see too many of them that are unmasked, and yet every day I'm on social media and we've lost another officer for that. So it's never a good thing. Hopefully it'll be encouraged among your ranks at least to wear the mask. One last thing, Cassandra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to piggyback on what both was previously stated. I think that one of the challenges relates to the courthouse, right? In the what we've learned in this virtual world in minimizing cross-contamination. And I know, Judge Robolo and just other case matters we've talked about, again, probation officers being able to appear virtually. And I want to thank the courts and to the public defender's office and certainly to the state attorney's office, who's allowed the department to continue to stay primarily in a virtual format. Because as I say to all folks, when you all go home, probation doesn't, right? And so if you quarantine probation officers who are supervising the children who are court ordered to community control. And so I think it's ever so important to understand the system impacts of what may seem convenient for some and the ripple effects. If I have to shut down the jack, then what happens, right? If I have to quarantine an entire building, then potentially you have 300 or 400 children who don't have staff to go out and supervise them. And so as we move forward, I think Gordon, you may have mentioned it before, what have we learned from this pandemic that we can continue to use without compromising folks' civil rights and diminishing the whole criminal justice, the integrity of the criminal justice process. But when you all are home at 3 or 4 o'clock, these kids, these staff are still out seeing prolific juvenile offenders. They're still out on the weekends installing electronic monitors on folks who are sick. The jack cannot turn down a kid because he or she tests positive, right? And so it is truly a systemic challenge. And so I just ask that we all advocate for smart practices that keep us all safe, both health-wise as well as personal and public safety. So just want to add that to the conversation, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, if all hearts and minds are clear, thank you all and take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.